At my grandson's wedding, the first thing handed to me was not a program, not a flower, not a warm embrace, but a small ivory seat card with 7 words that told me exactly where my family thought I belonged. Do not let her near the family table. I stood there beneath the crystal chandelier of the Magnolia House Hotel in Charleston, South Carolina, wearing the pale blue dress I had saved for special occasions and the pearl necklace my late husband, Henry, had fastened around my neck on our 40th anniversary. For a moment, I thought my eyes had betrayed me. At 72, I knew my vision was not what it used to be, so I tilted the card toward the golden light spilling across the check-in table and read it again. The words did not change. Do not let her near the family table. The young woman handing out place cards smiled politely, unaware that she had just placed a blade made of paper into my hand. Mrs. Whitfield? She asked, as if I had forgotten my own name. I looked at her name tag. Grace. Early 20s, nervous hands, kind eyes. Yes, I said softly. That's me. Behind her, the ballroom doors stood open, revealing white roses, linen-covered tables, tall candles, and a string quartet playing something gentle enough to make grief feel elegant. My grandson Caleb was getting married that afternoon. I had imagined this day for years. I had pictured myself sitting near the front, watching him take Madison's hand, remembering the little boy who used to run barefoot across my backyard every summer with grape jelly on his chin and a toy truck in each fist. I had helped raise that boy when Mark and Vanessa were too busy building careers, taking trips, and promising they would visit more often next month. I had packed his school lunches during summers, paid for his braces when Mark said business was slow, and sent checks quietly when college bills arrived with numbers large enough to make any young family panic. I never asked for recognition. I never needed my name on a plaque. But I had believed, foolishly perhaps, that love left a seat for you. I turned the card over once, hoping there might be some explanation on the back. There was only table 19, near the service entrance. The family table was table 1. I could see it from where I stood, placed directly beside the dance floor, dressed with extra flowers and gold-rimmed chargers. Mark's name was there. Vanessa's name was there. Even Vanessa's sister, who had met Caleb only twice before the engagement party, had a chair near the center. But not me. Henry's widow. Caleb's grandmother. The woman who had mailed the deposit for this very ballroom 6 months earlier when Vanessa called me crying about how expensive everything had become. I folded the seat card once, then twice, pressing the crease with my thumb until it lay flat in my palm. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. Women my age learn early that if we fall apart in public, people remember the falling apart more than the reason for it. So I smiled. Not because I was fine, and not because it did not hurt. I smiled because Vanessa Whitfield was standing 20 feet away in a champagne-colored dress, watching me over the rim of her glass, waiting to see whether I would embarrass myself. My son Mark stood beside her, adjusting his cuff links and pretending not to notice me. That was the part that reached deeper than the card. Not Vanessa's cruelty. I had known for years that her sweetness came with corners. It was Mark's silence. My only child looked at the woman who had given him a home, a father's name, and every second chance he ever needed, and he looked away. Grace lowered her voice. Mrs. Whitfield, would you like me to check if there's been a mistake? I kept my eyes on Vanessa. Her smile widened by half an inch. No, dear, I said, slipping the folded card into my small silver purse. I think this is exactly what someone intended. Then I lifted my chin, stepped through the ballroom doors, and walked toward table 19 with the same quiet posture Henry used to say made me look like I had already survived the worst thing in the room. What Vanessa did not know was that I had paid for more than the flowers. I walked to table 19 slowly, letting the soft music cover the sound of my shoes against the polished wood floor. It was a beautiful room, almost painfully beautiful. White roses climbed silver stands at the corners of the ballroom. Candles floated in glass bowls, and every table held folded napkins shaped like little fans. The kind of wedding a mother dreams of giving her child. The kind of wedding a grandmother saves for without ever saying so. My seat was not at the edge of the family table. It was not even near the dance floor. It was tucked beside a swinging door where servers carried trays in and out, close enough to the kitchen that I could smell butter, roasted chicken, and hot bread every time the door opened. The table was filled with people I barely recognized. A second cousin from Mark's father's side. 2 neighbors of Madison's parents. a retired co-worker of someone named Bill. They were polite, but their politeness only made the insult cleaner. No one had to say I had been placed with strangers. The seating chart said it for them. I sat down, placed my silver purse in my lap, and looked across the room at table 1. Vanessa moved from guest to guest with the practiced grace of a woman who wanted every photograph to know she was in charge. Her champagne dress caught the light each time she turned. Her blonde hair was swept into a neat twist, and the diamond earrings I had given her after Caleb's college graduation flashed beneath the chandelier. She touched Mark's arm when she laughed. She leaned toward Madison's mother as though they had been close for years. She kissed Caleb on the cheek with a tenderness that looked perfect from across a room. That was Vanessa's gift. From a distance, she looked like warmth. Up close, she could freeze the blood in your hands. Mark saw me watching. For one breath, our eyes met. I gave him a small nod, the kind a mother gives her son when she is still willing to let him choose decency. He looked down at his place setting. Then he reached for his water glass and began speaking to the man beside him. I turned my face toward the centerpiece and counted the roses until the tightness in my chest settled. 12 white roses. 3 sprigs of baby's breath. 1 crooked ribbon. Henry would have noticed the ribbon. He always noticed small things. He would have leaned close and whispered, "Ellie, someone was in a hurry." The thought of his voice nearly undid me, but I held myself still. A waiter filled my glass with iced tea and asked if I needed anything else. I almost said yes. I almost said I needed my husband back, my son honest, my grandson spared the ugliness hiding under all this satin and candlelight. Instead, I said, "No, thank you. I am fine." During the cocktail hour, guests drifted past my table without stopping. Some smiled in that uncertain way people do when they know you belong somewhere, but cannot figure out why you are not there. Patricia Collins, my closest friend, had not been invited, which I now understood with perfect clarity. Vanessa never liked witnesses who remembered the older version of our family, the version where I was not a problem to be managed. Then Vanessa appeared beside my chair. "Eleanor," she said brightly, placing one cool hand on the back of the empty chair next to me. "There you are. I was wondering if you had settled in." "I found my seat," I said. Her eyes dropped to my purse, and I knew she was wondering whether I still had the card. "Good. We thought this would be more comfortable for you. The family table is so busy, and you know how overwhelming these events can be at your age." "At your age?" She said it gently, almost sweetly, as if she were offering me a blanket instead of a warning. "I have managed larger rooms than this," I said. Her smile held, but her eyes sharpened. "Of course, we just did not want you feeling pressured to be part of every little moment." I looked toward Caleb, who was laughing with his groomsmen, still unaware of the quiet arrangement made around him. "Every little moment," I repeated. Vanessa leaned closer, her perfume heavy and expensive. "Today is about Caleb and Madison. I am sure you understand." I did understand, better than she realized. This was not about comfort. It was about distance. Not physical distance, but family distance. She wanted me far enough away that photographs could crop me out, conversations could forget me, and history could be rearranged before dessert. I smiled again, small and calm. "Yes, Vanessa," I said. "I understand exactly." After Vanessa walked away, I sat at table 19 and let the years come back to me in pieces. Not all at once. Pain rarely arrives that neatly. It comes through small doors. A phone call. A receipt. A memory you had once softened for the sake of peace. I remembered the first time Mark asked me for help after Henry passed. It was 3 months after the funeral, and I was still sleeping on Henry's side of the bed because my own side felt too large without him. Mark came by on a Sunday afternoon with Vanessa beside him, both of them dressed for church though neither had gone. He sat at my kitchen table, turning his wedding ring around his finger, and told me his contracting business was having a difficult quarter. Vanessa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, saying they did not want to worry Caleb, who was only 14 then. I wrote a check for $20,000 before the coffee finished brewing. Mark promised it was a loan. Vanessa called it a blessing. I called it family. 2 years later, when Caleb needed braces, Vanessa said their insurance would not cover enough. I paid the orthodontist directly. When he was accepted to Clemson, Mark said tuition had gone up more than they expected. I sent money every semester, never late, never mentioned. When Vanessa wanted to move out of their starter house into a larger place with a screened porch and a better school district, I gave them the down payment Henry and I had once set aside for a trip through New England. Henry had always wanted to see Maine in the fall. I told myself he would have understood. He loved Caleb. He believed family was where money should go before it went anywhere else. Across the ballroom, Caleb lifted Madison's hand and spun her lightly while a photographer snapped pictures. He looked happy, truly happy. That part mattered. I did not blame him for the seating chart. I did not believe he would have allowed it if he knew. But that was the cruelty of what Vanessa did so well. She arranged harm in the spaces where good people were too busy trusting her. She never announced her intentions. She adjusted them. One chair moved farther away. One invitation sent too late. One family photograph taken while I was in the restroom. One Thanksgiving dinner. Changed from noon to 4 without anyone telling me. If I complained, I sounded sensitive. If I stayed quiet, she gained another inch. I had given her years of inches. Now she had taken the whole table. A woman beside me asked how I knew the bride and groom. I opened my mouth, and for a strange second, I did not know what answer the room would allow me to give. Grandmother sounded too important for table 19. Family sounded almost dishonest. Caleb is my grandson, I said at last. Her eyebrows lifted before she could stop herself. Oh, she said, glancing toward table 1. I thought immediate family was seated over there. So did I replied. She looked away, embarrassed for me, which somehow felt kinder than pretending not to notice. I took a sip of iced tea and felt the cold travel down my throat. Vanessa was near the sweetheart table now, speaking with Madison's mother, one hand resting on her chest, as if overwhelmed by gratitude. I knew that gesture. She used it whenever she wanted people to see her as gracious. 6 months earlier, she had sat in my living room with a wedding folder open across her lap, sighing over vendor estimates. Eleanor, I hate even bringing this up, she had said, which always meant she was about to bring it up very carefully. The venue deposit, the florist, the photographer, the rehearsal dinner at the seafood restaurant near the harbor. Each request arrived wrapped in concern for Caleb. I paid because I loved him. I paid because Henry was gone, and helping his grandson felt like keeping one promise alive. Not once did I ask for control. Not once did I ask to be praised. But I did imagine a seat close enough to see Caleb's face when he looked for family. The band shifted into a softer song, and a server carried a tray of champagne past me toward table 1. None came to table 19. I watched the glasses sparkle under the lights, watched Vanessa lift hers in a private little toast with Mark, and suddenly the truth settled over me with quiet weight. They had not forgotten what I had done. They had counted on it. They had taken the money, taken the help, taken the years, and then tried to remove the woman attached to them. I reached into my purse and touched the folded seat card. The paper was still there. So was my name. So was the proof. The reception moved forward as if nothing had happened, which is how public humiliation often works. The candles keep burning. The music keeps playing. People keep smiling with butter on their bread plates and champagne in their hands. Only the person being erased feels the room changing shape around her. I stayed seated through the salad course, listening to strangers discuss golf memberships, delayed flights, and the price of waterfront property outside Charleston. Every few minutes, I looked toward table 1. Mark laughed at something Madison's father said. Vanessa leaned close to Caleb, smoothing the shoulder of his tuxedo jacket as if she alone had loved him into adulthood. I wondered whether Mark remembered the summer Caleb was 8 and afraid to sleep away from home, how I drove 200 miles to bring him his favorite blue blanket because Vanessa said she was too busy to turn around. I wondered whether he remembered the year I sold Henry's old fishing boat to help cover a business tax bill Mark had hidden from his own wife. Memories like that do not shout. They sit quietly inside you until someone treats you like a guest in a life you helped build. When the servers cleared the plates, I excused myself and walked toward the hallway near the restrooms, partly because I needed air and partly because Vanessa had taught me to listen where people assumed older women became invisible. The hallway was cooler, with framed watercolor prints of magnolia trees and a long mirror that reflected the ballroom doors behind me. I paused near a champagne table where 2 bridesmaids stood with their backs half turned. One had copper-colored hair pinned with pearl clips. The other held her phone low, scrolling through photographs. Vanessa is going to lose her mind if the grandmother ends up in the main pictures, the copper-haired one whispered. She already told Grace to keep her away from the family table, the other said. I saw the note. It was so awkward. My hand tightened around my purse strap, but I did not move. The first bridesmaid gave a nervous laugh. That is harsh. Why would she do that? She said Eleanor makes everything about herself and that Caleb feels obligated because of money. Vanessa wants today to look clean. Just the real family. The real family. 3 simple words. They landed harder than the seat card because they explained the intention behind it. Vanessa was not merely pushing me to the back of the room. She was editing me out of the picture entirely. I stepped back before they could notice me and walked to a quiet alcove beside a tall arrangement of white lilies. My hands were steady now, strangely steady. There is a kind of pain that shakes you, and there is another kind that makes everything clear. I opened my purse, took out the folded card, and photographed it with my phone. Then I returned to the entrance table and took a picture of the printed seating chart displayed in its gold frame. Table 1, Family. Table 19, Miscellaneous Guests. My name was not even under Whitfield. It was listed as Eleanor W., as if my last name had become inconvenient too. Grace was standing nearby with a clipboard pressed against her waist. When she saw me taking the picture, her face changed. Not with annoyance. With recognition. She knew. I could see it before she said a word. Mrs. Whitfield, she whispered, stepping closer. I am so sorry. For what, dear? I asked, though we both knew. Her eyes darted toward the ballroom doors. The seating chart was changed this morning. I did not print that note. I printed the final cards, but the wording came from an instruction sheet. I thought someone would catch it before guests arrived. Who gave you the instruction sheet? I asked. Grace swallowed. She was young enough to still believe truth required permission. Mrs. Vanessa Whitfield emailed it last night. She said it was a family matter. I nodded once. No surprise. No performance. Just the quiet closing of a door inside me. Do you still have the email? Grace hesitated, then looked toward table 1 where Vanessa was laughing under the chandelier. Yes, she said softly. And the original chart? Yes, ma'am. Your seat was originally beside Mr. Mark Whitfield. Beside my son. Not hidden. Not reduced to an initial. Beside my son, where Henry would have expected me to be. I looked at Grace, this young woman caught between a paycheck and a conscience. Send both to me, I said. Please. She nodded and pulled out her phone. A minute later, mine buzzed inside my purse. I did not open the files yet. I did not need to. The proof had arrived, and with it came something I had not felt in years. Not anger. Not revenge. Permission. Permission to stop protecting people who had stopped protecting me. Grace sent the email while standing beside me in the hallway, her thumb moving quickly over the screen as if she were afraid courage might leave her if she waited too long. When my phone buzzed again, I opened the message just far enough to see the attachments. Original seating chart. Final seating chart. Vanessa instruction sheet. Those 3 file names sat in my inbox like quiet witnesses. Grace looked pale. I should have said something earlier, she whispered. I am sorry, Mrs. Whitfield. I really am. I studied her face and saw no malice there. Only the frightened regret of a young woman who had been told to do something wrong by someone paying the bill. At least, someone she thought was paying the bill. You are saying something now, I told her. That matters. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. Mrs. Vanessa said you had caused problems before. She said you might try to take attention away from the bride. A small laugh left me before I could stop it. Not a happy laugh. More like the sound a person makes when the last piece of a puzzle finally turns over. Did she? Grace nodded. She said you liked being treated as the head of the family. I looked through the open ballroom doors. Vanessa stood near the cake table, giving instructions to the photographer with one hand lifted like a conductor. Mark stood beside her, silent as ever, his face turned toward Caleb and Madison. The cake was 5 tiers high, white with thin gold trim and tiny sugar magnolias along the side. I had paid the deposit on that too. Vanessa had called it just a temporary favor because the bakery required the balance earlier than expected. I wondered how many temporary favors it took before a woman became invisible. Grace, I asked, who does the program list under special thanks? She glanced at her clipboard, then away. That was answer enough. May I see it? She handed me a folded program from the stack at the welcome table. The paper was thick, cream-colored, expensive. I opened it carefully. There were Caleb and Madison's names. Their parents. The wedding party. A lovely note thanking friends and family for celebrating their love. A special line for Madison's grandparents, both deceased. A thank you to Vanessa's sister for helping with decorations. Nothing about Henry. Nothing about me. Not even a simple thank you to Caleb's grandmother. The woman who had helped buy the flowers, the music, the food, the ballroom, the rehearsal dinner, and the photographer who had been instructed not to capture her. I closed the program and smoothed the crease with my thumb. I see. Grace looked down. The first version had your name. And Mr. Henry's. It said, "In loving memory of Henry Whitfield, whose legacy helped make this day possible, and with gratitude to Eleanor Whitfield for her love and support." Mrs. Vanessa removed it yesterday. For a moment, the hallway became very quiet. I could still hear the music, the clink of silverware, the rise and fall of polite laughter, but it seemed to come from far away. Henry's name had been removed. That changed the shape of my hurt. Vanessa could push me to a back table. She could reduce my name to an initial. She could whisper that I was too old, too needy, too inconvenient. But Henry had loved Caleb with his whole heart. Henry had spent Saturday mornings teaching that boy how to sand a piece of wood, how to bait a hook, how to shake a man's hand and look him in the eye. Henry was not a decoration Vanessa could take down because it did not match her color palette. I folded the program and placed it in my purse beside the seat card. One paper insult, one printed erasure, one email trail, 3 quiet witnesses. Grace touched my sleeve gently. "Mrs. Whitfield, do you want me to move you? I can add a chair to the family table." I looked toward table 1. There was no room there anymore, not because of chairs, but because of choices. "No," I said. "Not yet." She seemed confused. "Are you sure?" "Very sure." Because moving me now would only hide what had been done. It would let Vanessa correct the picture without correcting the heart behind it. I had spent too many years accepting late apologies designed only to preserve appearances. This time, appearances would have to answer for themselves. I returned to table 19 just as the main course was being served. Roasted chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes, warm rolls with butter shaped like flowers. I ate 3 bites because I had learned long ago that a woman should not face a difficult moment on an empty stomach. Across the room, Caleb leaned close to Madison and laughed at something she said. He looked so young in that instant, so unaware that love and family can occupy the same room as betrayal. I touched the edge of my purse and felt the papers inside. For years, I had protected Mark from embarrassment, Vanessa from exposure, Caleb from disappointment, and myself from admitting what I already knew. But the evening had crossed a line even grief could not soften. They had not only moved my seat, they had tried to move my place in the story. And for the first time that day, I stopped wondering why they had done it and began wondering when the room should know. The speeches began after dinner, when the ballroom had softened into that golden hour of a wedding reception where everyone feels sentimental enough to forgive what they have not yet understood. Madison's father spoke first, his voice trembling as he welcomed Caleb into their family. He talked about kindness, patience, and the importance of building a marriage on truth. I watched Mark during that line. He shifted in his chair, then looked toward Vanessa, but she was too busy checking the photographer's position to notice. Then Mark stood. My son looked handsome in his dark suit, older than I remembered him being, with silver beginning at his temples the same way Henry's had. For a second, I saw the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and ask if they counted as flowers. Then he unfolded his paper and began thanking everyone in the careful voice of a man who had practiced avoiding certain names. He thanked Madison's parents for raising such a wonderful daughter. He thanked Vanessa for creating the perfect day. He thanked guests who had traveled from Georgia, North Carolina, and as far as California. He even thanked the florist by name. I waited. Not for myself, not exactly. I waited for Henry. But Mark reached the end, lifted his glass, and said, "To Caleb and Madison, may your family always be your foundation." The room applauded. I held my hands together in my lap. Family is foundation. The phrase moved through me slowly. Foundations are buried, I thought. People stand on them and forget what is underneath. Vanessa rose next, glowing beneath the chandelier. She did not carry notes. She never needed them when the performance was about herself. "When I think about today," she began, "I think about all the love that brought us here." She placed one hand over her heart, and several women smiled. "Mark and I have poured everything we have into giving Caleb and Madison a day worthy of their future. Poured everything we have." I looked at the 5-tier cake, the roses, the hired quartet, The gold-rimmed plates. The ballroom that required a deposit larger than my first car had cost. My purse rested against my knee, holding the quiet record of what she had poured and what she had taken. Vanessa continued, thanking her sister for tireless support, Madison's mother for grace, and the wedding planner for making every detail seamless. Grace stood near the wall, her face carefully still. Then Vanessa lifted her glass. And most of all, I am grateful that today reflects the family Caleb truly comes from. The family Caleb truly comes from. There it was again, dressed in satin this time. Caleb smiled uncertainly, perhaps sensing something beneath the words without knowing its shape. He stood and hugged his mother, then took the microphone from her. "Thank you, Mom," he said. His voice was warm, unguarded. Then his eyes began searching the room. For one frightening second, I thought he would not find me. Table 19 was tucked so far back that the servers blocked me when they passed. But then his face changed. He saw me. "Grandma Ellie," he said into the microphone, smiling in that boyish way that had survived all the years. The room turned. Vanessa's smile froze. "I know you hate being put on the spot, but I would really love it if you said something. You and Grandpa Henry were such a big part of my life, and it would not feel right if people did not hear from you." The silence that followed was small but sharp. Mark looked down at the table. Vanessa leaned toward Caleb and whispered something, but he gently shook his head, still looking at me. That was when I understood that not everything had been lost. Vanessa had moved my chair, but she had not moved me from Caleb's memory. I stood slowly, smoothing the front of my dress. The room blurred for a moment, not from tears, but from the weight of being seen after an evening of being hidden. Grace stepped forward as if to help, then stopped when she realized I did not need help. I walked past the service door, past the champagne table, past guests who now watched me with polite curiosity. Each step felt measured, not dramatic, not rushed, just certain. When I reached Caleb, he handed me the microphone and kissed my cheek. "I love you, Grandma," he whispered. I touched his hand. "I love you too, sweetheart." Then I turned toward the room. Vanessa stood 3 feet away, her eyes bright with warning. Mark looked pale. Madison smiled at me kindly, unaware that her wedding had become the place where truth had finally found a microphone. I looked at Caleb first, because he was the only innocent reason I was still standing there. "When your grandfather was alive," I began, "he used to say that a family table was not built from wood. It was built from who was welcome there." The room quieted. Even the servers near the wall stopped moving. I reached into my purse, felt the folded card between my fingers, and knew the evening had reached the moment it had been walking towards since I arrived. I looked down at the folded card in my hand, then back at Caleb. His face was open, trusting, still carrying the expression of the little boy who used to believe every adult in the room wanted the best for him. That was the only reason I hesitated. Not because I feared Vanessa, not because I feared Mark. I hesitated because a wedding day should belong to the bride and groom, and I had spent 72 years believing that older women should absorb discomfort so younger people could keep smiling. But then I remembered Henry's name missing from the program. I remembered my own name reduced to an initial. I remembered Vanessa's instruction that I be kept away from the family photographs, away from the family table, away from the clean version of the Whitfields she wanted everyone to admire. There are moments when silence is grace, and there are moments when silence becomes permission. I unfolded the card slowly. The paper made a small sound in the microphone, soft enough that people leaned forward without meaning to. Vanessa took one step toward me. "Eleanor," she said under her breath, still smiling for the cameras, "this is not the time." I looked at her for a long second. "No," I said gently. "It is exactly the time. Because the whole room is here, and for once, nobody can say I misunderstood." The smile left her face. I turned back to the guests, holding the card between 2 fingers. When I arrived today, this was the seat card handed to me. A murmur passed through the ballroom. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The microphone carried every word clearly under the chandelier. It did not say grandmother of the groom. It did not say Eleanor Whitfield. It said, "Do not let her near the family table." The room changed. You could feel it before you could hear it. A fork touched a plate somewhere near the back. Someone whispered, then stopped. Madison's mother covered her mouth. Caleb stared at the card as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less cruel if he looked long enough. They did not. Vanessa laughed once, too quickly. That is obviously a misunderstanding, she said, reaching toward the card. I moved it back, not dramatically, just enough. I thought so too, for about 5 seconds. My voice stayed calm, almost softer than before. Then I saw where I had been seated. Then I saw the program. Then I learned the original seating chart had been changed this morning. I glanced toward Grace, who stood near the wall with her clipboard held tightly against her chest. I did not name her. I did not need to place a young woman in Vanessa's path. The truth was already standing on its own. Mark rose halfway from his chair. Mom, maybe we should talk about this privately. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and for the first time that day, he looked back. Privately is where this has always lived, I said. Private phone calls asking for money. Private explanations for why I was not invited. Private excuses when holidays changed, when photographs were taken without me, when your father's memory became inconvenient. Today, someone made it public. I am only reading what they wrote. Caleb turned to Vanessa. Mom, did you know about this? Vanessa's eyes flashed, not with guilt at first, but with annoyance that the question had been asked where people could hear it. Caleb, sweetheart, this is being twisted. Your grandmother has always been emotional about family events. There it was. The old trick. Make the wound about the woman who points to it. I nodded once, as if she had given me exactly what I expected. I have been emotional, I said. I was emotional when I held you as a baby, Caleb, while your parents worked late. I was emotional when I mailed your tuition checks because I wanted you to graduate without fear. I was emotional when I paid the deposit on this ballroom because your mother said the wedding was becoming too expensive and she did not want to disappoint you. Caleb's face went pale. Madison turned toward him, then toward Vanessa. Mark closed his eyes. I kept my gaze on my grandson. I did those things with love, not to buy a seat. But I never imagined love would be accepted quietly and then hidden at table 19. No one applauded. No one should have. This was not a performance. It was a mirror. I placed the card on the small table beside the microphone, where the photographer, the guests, and my family could see it clearly. I was not hurt because I was seated far away, I said. I was hurt because someone decided I no longer belonged to the family I helped build. For several seconds, no one moved. The ballroom seemed to hold its breath beneath the chandeliers. Even the string quartet had stopped playing, their bows resting quietly in their laps as if music itself had become inappropriate. Caleb picked up the card from the small table and read it again, slower this time, like he was trying to understand not just the words but the person who had allowed them to exist. Who wrote this? He asked. His voice was not loud, but it carried farther than any shout could have. Vanessa reached for his arm. Caleb, please. This is your wedding. Do not let this become something ugly. He pulled his arm back gently. That small movement said more than anger would have. It already is ugly, he said. Madison stood beside him, her hand resting lightly against his back. She looked at me with tears in her eyes, not the dramatic kind, but the quiet kind that come when a good person realizes a celebration has been built over someone else's hurt. Mark finally stood. My son looked smaller than he had at dinner, smaller than the boy in my memories, smaller than the man who had once promised Henry he would always take care of me. Mom, he said, I did not know about the card. I believed him. That was the saddest part. Mark often did not know because not knowing had become easier for him than disagreeing with his wife. But you knew where I was sitting, I said. His mouth opened, then closed. That answer was enough. Vanessa lifted her chin. This is unfair. I planned this entire wedding. I was trying to prevent tension. Eleanor has a way of making people feel guilty. A low murmur moved through the guests. Not approval. Recognition. People know deflection when they hear it, especially when it is dressed too nicely. Before I could answer, an older man rose from a table near the front. Thomas Reed, Henry's attorney, old friend, and one of the few people in that room who had known me before my hair turned silver. I had not realized he was there until he stepped into the aisle with his cane in one hand and a folded program in the other. Vanessa, he said, calm as Sunday morning, I would be careful with what you call unfair. Her face tightened. Thomas, this is a family matter. It became more than that when Eleanor's name was removed from financial acknowledgments connected to expenses she covered. The room went still again, but this time the silence had edges. Mark looked at Thomas. What are you talking about? Thomas turned to my son, and there was no cruelty in his expression, only disappointment. Your father asked me years ago to help structure the Whitfield family trust in a way that protected Eleanor first. Not the business, not the house, not future distributions. Eleanor. Vanessa's hand dropped from her chest. The gesture of wounded innocence disappeared so quickly it almost startled me. Thomas continued. Henry also left a private letter of instruction. Eleanor knows this, though I do not believe she has ever used it. If she is publicly humiliated, financially pressured, or deliberately excluded while her resources are being used, she has full authority to suspend discretionary support tied to the trust and redirect future benefits. Caleb looked from Thomas to me. Grandma. I met his eyes. Your grandfather wanted everyone cared for, I said, but not at the cost of letting people treat me like a wallet with gray hair. A few guests looked down at their plates. Vanessa's face lost color beneath her makeup. You would not do that, she said, but her voice no longer had the polished confidence from the champagne table. I turned to her. I have done many things I thought I would never do. I buried my husband. I learned to eat breakfast alone. I sat at the back of my grandson's wedding while strangers wondered why his grandmother was not with the family. So yes, Vanessa, I can do this. Mark stepped toward me, his voice low. Mom, let us not make decisions tonight. I made no decision tonight, I said. Tonight only showed me which decisions I should have made sooner. Thomas unfolded the program and held it up. Henry's name should have been here, he said. Eleanor's too. Caleb took the program from him and stared at the blank space where gratitude should have lived. Then he looked at Vanessa, and this time there was no confusion left in his face. Only hurt. You removed Grandpa? He asked. Vanessa pressed her lips. Together. For once, she had no sentence ready. I set the microphone down carefully. Not dropped. Not shoved. Set down. There is power in placing something gently when everyone expects you to break it. This wedding will continue, I said to Caleb and Madison. It should. You two deserve your first evening as husband and wife. But after tonight, my name will not be used where my presence is unwanted, and my help will not support tables where I am not allowed to sit. I left before the cake was cut, not because I wanted to punish Caleb or Madison, and not because I wanted the guests whispering over dessert. I left because there are moments when staying becomes another way of agreeing to be diminished. Caleb followed me into the hallway before I reached the front doors, his new wedding ring shining under the soft hotel lights. Grandma, please, he said, his voice breaking in the way it had when he was little and trying not to cry. I am so sorry. I did not know. I swear I did not know. I turned to him and placed my hand against his cheek. He was taller than Henry had been, broader in the shoulders, a grown man in a tuxedo, but for 1 second I saw the boy who used to fall asleep on my couch with a comic book open on his chest. I believe you, I said, and I love you. That has not changed. Madison came up beside him, holding the front of her dress carefully so it would not drag across the floor. Mrs. Whitfield, she said softly, I am sorry too. Eleanor, I told her. You can call me Eleanor. Her eyes filled again, and she nodded. That small respect meant more to me than any toast Vanessa had rehearsed. Behind them, Mark stood near the ballroom doors, not close enough to comfort me, not brave enough to return to his table. Vanessa was nowhere in sight. Perhaps she was repairing the story. Perhaps she was telling guests I had misunderstood, overreacted, grown confused with age. She could say whatever she wanted now. The card existed. The email existed. The program existed. More importantly, the room had heard the truth in my own voice. Mark finally walked toward me. Mom, he said, I should have stopped this. I looked at him for a long moment, letting his words settle where excuses usually landed. Yes, I said. You should have. His face tightened. I did not want a scene. Neither did I. My voice stayed even. But your wife created one in private and expected me to carry it quietly. He rubbed his forehead, suddenly looking exhausted. Can we talk tomorrow? You can call Thomas tomorrow, I said. Any family business will go through him for now. That hurt him. I saw it. But hurt is not always harm. Sometimes it is the first honest thing a person feels after years of comfort paid for by someone else's silence. Caleb reached for my hand. Will you still be in my life? The question nearly broke me, but I would not let Vanessa take that too. Yes, sweetheart, I said, but not through people who treat me like an inconvenience. You and Madison may come to my home any Sunday you choose. I will make pot roast, the way your grandfather liked it. but I will not chase a place in a family that only remembers me when something needs to be paid." He nodded, ashamed and grateful all at once. I kissed his cheek, then Madison's. "Go back inside," I told them. "Dance. Eat your cake. Begin your marriage with more honesty than this family gave you tonight." They stood there as I walked out through the glass doors into the warm Charleston evening. The valet brought my car around, and for the first time all day, the air felt easy to breathe. At home, the house was quiet, but it was not empty. Not the way it had been after Henry died. This quiet belonged to me. I took off my pearl necklace and placed it beside Henry's photograph on the dresser. Then I removed the folded seat card from my purse and set it next to him. "Do not let her near the family table." I read it one last time and felt no shame, only clarity. The next morning, sunlight moved across the kitchen floor while coffee brewed in the same pot Henry used for 20 years. At exactly 9 o'clock, I called Thomas Reed. "I am ready," I said. "Suspend the discretionary support. Review the trust. Remove Mark and Vanessa from anything that depends on my approval." Thomas was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Henry would want you protected." I looked at the seat card lying on the table beside my coffee cup. "No," I said softly. "Henry would want me respected." By noon, the first calls began. Mark called 3 times. Vanessa left one message, her voice tight and sweet, saying we needed to clear up a misunderstanding. I deleted it before she finished the second sentence. Caleb sent a text that simply said, "I love you, Grandma Ellie." Madison added, "We want Sunday dinner when you are ready." I answered that one. That afternoon, I drove to the florist and ordered white roses for Henry's grave. Not wedding roses. Not apology roses. Just clean, quiet roses for a man who had known my worth before I had to prove it to anyone else. They wanted me away from the family table, so I removed my name from everything that kept it standing.